Council approves. Here. Thumbs up. All right. Good evening, everybody, to the council workshop for November 28th. As we have quorum, I'll call the meeting to order. The time is 6 p.m. Usual, I'd like to start the meeting off in a good way by acknowledging that City of Maple Ridge carries out its business under traditional and unceded territory of the Casey First Nation and the Kwantlen First Nation. Madam Clerk, I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded and will be available to the public for playback on our website in accordance with Council Policy 3.12. The primary purpose of a council workshop meeting is the receipt of information, review and discussion of policies and other matters of interest to council, and to make decisions related to such matters as required. Your Worship, the first item on tonight's agenda is approval of the agenda.
Okay, can I get a motion for the approval of the agenda? Moved by Councillor Doze, seconded by Councillor Youssef. Any comments, questions on the agenda? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Moving on to the next item,
Which is adoption of the minutes.
So can I get a motion to move the adoption of the minutes from October 24th? Moved by Councillor Schiller, seconded by Councillor Doze. Comments, questions? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to the next item, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. The next item is item 5.1, Agricultural Land Reserve Exclusion Application Process Policy, to establish a procedure and set of considerations to follow when reviewing requests from private landowners. Staff are in attendance to present the application to council.
Hello. Welcome. You have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So the item before you tonight brings to a close a piece of work that was initiated in 2020. So in 2020, the Ministry of Agriculture made some legislative changes to how exclusion applications can come forward to the Agricultural Land Commission. Essentially, prior to 2020, landowners could bring them forward. Going forward, now the local government has to act on behalf of these private landowners. So in November 2020, staff came to council with a proposed direction in terms of how we would be able to evaluate these applications and how to move them forward to council. So the item before you is capturing the work from that report into a policy. And there will be a secondary piece following from a fee and charges perspective, but that's not before you this evening. So tonight's focus is on this council policy, which is proposed as policy 6.36, and it's largely comprised of two main components. One is going to be the process that anyone would follow should they wish to make an application for exclusion. And the second piece, which we'll get to in just a moment, is what those criteria would be evaluated against to move forward. So at a very high level, should someone wish to remove their property from the ALR, they would be able to make an application to the city. We would complete a technical review of the application. Should it pass those criteria, we would then begin the ALC's mandated process, which does include a public hearing. So to go to the public hearing, we'd be bringing the report to council. Council can then decide to move the application forward to public hearing, or if you're not supportive of the application, it would of course go back to the applicant. Following the public hearing, council would then have another point of decision making to refer it to the ALC or not. And should it be successful, it would be then moved to the ALC for consideration of exclusion, which would then be in the hands of the ALC. So how we'll be evaluating the initial technical review is based on four primary criteria. The first is whether or not the subject property is already identified as a remnant parcel, which is included in the map in the application package, and whether or not the relevant bylaws, policies, and plans in place at the time can support the exclusion, and whether or not, I shouldn't say and, it is an or. Any one of these four would trigger the ability for the application to come forward for council. So whether or not the land use makes sense due to its parcel size, where it's located, what is beside it, whether or not the parcel is farmable. And then the last element that we just wanted to evaluate is whether or not there may be a more suitable form of ALC application that would be a better fit. This, for example, whether or not a non-farm use may be more appropriate. So between the process, which I just outlined, and these criteria, these are the two pieces that make up the policy before you this evening. So should council wish to endorse the policy, it would come into effect. It's a council policy, not a bylaw, and doesn't require 4 readings or a public hearing. And this policy would be used at a staff level to guide interested individuals who may wish to remove their property from the ALR. The recommendation is on the screen before you and included in your council package. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to move this item? Moved by Councillor Doze, second by Councillor Chan. We'll open it up for questions. Councillor Carreras, followed by Councillor Youssef.
Thank you. Thank you for this. A quick question. So under the fees that we charge, what was it, $5,100 or something, we figure is the charge back. So that would be reviewed annually. Like every time we go and review our fees, we would annually look at that 5,100. I just want to make sure we're doing a check-in annually to make sure it still makes sense.
Yes, so through the chair, the fee isn't in the policy tonight. The fee will come forward under a fees and charges bylaw amendment.
Yeah.
So my understanding is that it would be reviewed whenever the fee and charges bylaw is reviewed.
How often do we review that?
Fairly regularly.
It's annual? Okay. Yeah, I thought it was annual. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Councillor Youssef.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to staff for the presentation and report. Through the chair to staff, how much weight would the farmability of a parcel hold in the application process?
Through the chair, the evaluation criteria have not been weighted. So if a subject property is a remnant parcel, we wouldn't have to move through the other criteria. So there's the criteria are intended to be flexible. So I would say if it was a very unfarmable remnant property with a bunch of very non-complementary land uses, I don't think it would be weighted very highly because it would have these other criteria that would be stronger. If it's the sole one that would be the only one that's applicable, we would of course look to an agrologist report to confirm the suitability of the lands and would be able to move it forward for council consideration depending on what that professional agrologist brought forward.
Thank you for that. And I apologize to staff that have heard me repeat this. When I'm looking at farmland, I'm wondering, does it produce food for humans or feed for animals? And if it doesn't produce either, then why would it be considered agriculture? And that would be part of the, of course, consideration to exclude a parcel of land in that respect. Through the chair to staff, are we able as the municipality to then highlight that to the Agricultural Land Commission when applications come before us that if we do support exclusion, that we are supporting it based on the fact that this land does not produce anything and probably or may not, depending on the agrologist report?
Through the chair, yes, when we send it off to the ALC, we provide a copy of the staff report. We also provide copies of council comments, including links to the council videos. So they're able to get a fulsome understanding of where council sits on a particular application, as well as staff's professional recommendation, which would of course include the technical background reports.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Those are my questions and comments.
Thank you. Councillor Schiller.
Thank you, Mayor Remy. Through you to staff, I just had a question that you may have just answered, but one of the criteria is a land use assessment. And can you just clarify who does the land use assessment? Is that done by staff or is there a consultant hired or?
Through the chair, I believe staff would do the initial assessment. If there's a particular area that we are uncertain of, we generally solicit the input from the relevant experts. So often when we are addressing agricultural items, that will be professional agrologists. If it's an environmental element, we'll of course go to a professional a qualified qualified environmental professional. So it'll depend on what element of the land use assessment we're particularly looking for, but I would imagine in these cases it'd be heavily on the agrologist side if we aren't able to make that determination in-house.
Thank you. I've never heard of an agrologist before, so we're all learning things. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Then I will just ask, throw in my 2 cents here. You may not be able to answer this one, but what was the motivation for the province moving to this in the first place? You're laughing, so.
Through the chair, I don't know if I can necessarily answer it, but I believe in the background context section of the report, we quote the province in the reasoning as to why. So I would review the background section, and that's the ALC's and the Ministry of Agricultural's rationale.
Okay, so I guess from the perspective of anybody who has ALR land, does this put us, so if we don't move forward with an application, then the application goes nowhere, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so, and I just, for clarification again, so if somebody comes to us and we deem it not worthy to move forward, then it's not going to move forward.
That's correct. The ALC would prefer that the municipalities only move forward applications that they support.
Okay. And when it comes to us, so staff will be making recommendations on a particular parcel based on the criteria you've presented to us. And they'll make the recommendation as to whether they think we should move forward or should not move forward. So in situations where somebody wants to build a hockey rink on their ALR land, is that something that we would consider moving forward?
The last criteria identified is whether or not there would be a more appropriate ALC application given the use. So should someone wish to construct something that's very non-agricultural in nature, it may not require exclusion. It may require a non-farm use application. It would very much depend on size and scale. So there is quite a bit of flexibility in the applications depending on what a subject property owner may be wishing to achieve.
Okay, I don't have any further questions. Anybody have a second round? Seeing none, I will call the question. You have a question? Councilor
Okay, so
Taylor.
I have a question about ALR lands, but it's not about this policy. Can I ask that?
Take it offline.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
I will call a question. All those in favor? And motion is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. There is nothing further on the agenda besides adjournment.
Well, look at that. Wish they can all go this fast. As we have no further business, I will adjourn the meeting and see you all